Yeah, we are good to go. Yeah.
Welcome, everyone. This session is about Microsoft Project Cortex, AI-powered enterprise knowledge network. And I am your speaker today. I'm Joel Oleson. I'm an MVP and Microsoft Regional Director. And I'm a director at Proficient, which is a consulting company in the US. You can find me on Twitter, LinkedIn. I've got a couple different blogs. I've got a tech blog, my collabshow.com, and I love to travel. In fact, I've been to India 3 different times. My travel blog is travelingepic.com. And, if you know anything about me, one of the things is that I love to travel. So a little bit more about myself. I've actually been working with these Microsoft technologies from SharePoint to Teams and so on since the beginning. In fact, I started back at Microsoft back in the year 2000 working with the Tahoe team as well as the Office Web Server team, part of the Office team, way back in 2000, and bringing what would later be called SharePoint to Microsoft internal. So back when it's in its early betas and even alpha, but basically offering it as a service internal to Microsoft. I'd later go on to help design the first deployment in the cloud for the BPOS, also known as Managed Services Deployment, basically what would later become Office 365. So working with Microsoft's first customer Energizer and essentially both deploying SharePoint to Microsoft through the first couple of waves and then also externally to customers. Then I joined the marketing team as a product manager at Microsoft. And all that was more than 10 years ago. I've actually been out of Microsoft since 2008 and worked at a variety of different consulting companies as well as enterprise customers, global-based customers, and now I work at Proficient as a director in the Microsoft practice. And the Proficient practice, definitely not going to go into much of this, but basically we've been helping customers get to the cloud. In fact, we have an India development center, um, and lots of good stuff. Fairly large practice, 300 plus Microsoft consultants. So my session, I want to introduce you to Project Cortex, which if you listen to Ignite next week, you're going to find that there is a new name coming. I'm not announcing that name. As well, Microsoft is very close to releasing the public side of this AI-based project. And there's a lot of hooks for developers. So if we've got any developers on, you're going to love the amount of work that's going to come your way. For those of you who love AI, even if you are new to it, there's a lot of user interface. There's a lot of UI that you can actually work with, but there's a lot of APIs that are coming and more coming as well. And there's quite a bit that can be done today to prepare for this project, including moving to the modern UI, um, working with acronyms in search, working with your information architecture to move into hubs, um, updating and cleaning out profiles, cleaning up data, any data you can archive, or kicking off your retention processes, things like that. Getting your taxonomies ready to go. Not saying you're going to build them completely out, but a lot of the planning for managed metadata and enterprise content types, there's some things that a lot of companies will need to do to be thinking about the approach from a perspective of roles and responsibilities, understanding what do they actually want done. So a lot of this is kind of preparing for this. But what I'm going to be doing today in this particular session, I want to first introduce this concept of how we incorporate AI or artificial intelligence in the enterprise and what that's actually going to do for business data, and it's huge. Then I want to help you understand what this app is, what this platform is, and how it takes advantage of the data that's in SharePoint, in Office 365, and Microsoft 365, and beyond. What it really can provide for business value, as well as, again, kind of coming back to that idea of accelerating and preparing for what we're talking about with Microsoft. Now, I'm going to start off with a little video. Yeah, 1 second. Here we go. I'm actually going to start with the other video first. 1 second. Here we go. And if you can just let me know that you can hear my screen. Did you hear that? Okay, I don't know if you guys have ever seen Indiana Jones, but the very, very end of Indiana Jones, he's wondering what happened to the Ark of the Covenant, and they're like, "Oh, we got it, and we'll have our top people on it." And at the very end of the movie, you see this guy wheeling this box into this massive, massive warehouse, and they zoom out. And you start realizing just how much of the world's information, our treasures really, are based on how good our classification is, our cataloging ability. And what you'll quickly find out is humans are really, really bad at classifying, at categorizing, at storing, and data retrieval. It's not even just data, but even physical storage and retrieval is such a huge problem in this world.
As a new project manager, I need to quickly take on a lot of processes and projects. At first, this seemed impossible. How can I quickly learn about projects and find all the related content and experts? Luckily, we have Project Cortex, and it's easy to tap into my organization's knowledge. By connecting content and people in my organization, Project Cortex puts the information I need in the apps I use every day. Let me give you a few examples. When I hover over a project name, I get a topic card that tells me what I need to know about the project, including descriptions, internal experts, and related content right within the flow of my work. To get more depth, I access the topic page, which is automatically created with AI and reviewed by our experts. Now, my team and I can quickly learn about the projects or discover related topics from anywhere in Microsoft 365. When we upload new project documents, Project Cortex automatically tags and organizes them. This allows us to easily manage knowledge, find what matters, streamline processes, and gain insights. Using Project Cortex, I can learn faster, contribute to my team and projects, and manage content with the power of AI. And my company can better manage security and compliance for our most valuable content. Learn more about Project Cortex.
Okay, that that URL that it just displayed there, the aka.ms/Project Cortex, that's the #1 resource for where you can find Project Cortex information. So that's a really good one, and I'll be referring to it a couple times throughout the session. So let's talk about this AI in the information age, and then we'll dig into Project Cortex. Now, let me start off with a very popular quote. This former CEO of HP, he said this back in 1987. He says, "If HP knew what HP knows, we would be 3 times more productive." Now, if you think about that, that's pretty incredible. Like what does that really mean? I think we're getting a little bit of background. Can we put everybody on mute except for me? One second. I think this is going to be distracting.
Yeah, we are good.
You're good? Okay, great.
Sorry about that.
No problem. So we talk about this. What about organizational intelligence? This idea that if we could tap into the organization's knowledge, today there's so much of it that we store our stuff in file shares, or we store our data in SharePoint, or there's all those emails that go back and forth. But there's such a problem with extracting data out of that information and our ability to recover information that is actually stored. And if you think about it, if you're a new employee, how long does it take for you to ramp up? It can actually be quite difficult sometimes, especially based on your role, how you leverage the information that's organization. That ability to ramp up very quickly is super, super important. And I know that in India, one of the things I've noticed is there's a lot of turnover in some of these tech companies. So how do you make sure that the knowledge that people don't leave with knowledge? Obviously they're learning and they're going on to their next job, but how does the organization not suffer so much when somebody joins and when somebody leaves, that going in and out of the door? How do we preserve organizational intelligence? Now, the other thing is when you actually realize just how much data is being generated, that 90% of the data in existence has been generated in the last 2 years. It's like the paper just from faxes can go to the moon and back. It's incredible the amount of paper, just the data that's actually generated. 500 billion Office documents were created just last year. It's incredible the amount of data that's being generated. And when you start talking about IoT and the data that's actually coming from our systems, it's, again, 90% of the data has been generated in the last 2 years in existence. And this idea that we are responsible, as humans, we're responsible for storing and retrieving data, it's a big problem. And these problems, there's some major problems. One is the silos of knowledge that get created, where basically we're storing data in different systems. We even within those systems, we create sites or site collections or folders. We're basically creating these silos of knowledge, and then we're locking people out of it. So even one team to the next, the person who had rights to that left, or they were storing data on their system and that computer went away. There's so many problems with the silos of knowledge between departments or between teams and so on. And there's that ability to discover it, which with search and discovery is often a failure as well. Our ability, we don't know what to search for. That's a big problem. And even if we knew the keywords, those documents may not necessarily be tagged properly. And then there's all this untapped knowledge. You've got these people who are walking around the organization who know the answers. How many people, even on the line here now, have participated in a knowledge base, right? It takes a lot of work to get people to actually document their processes and procedures and even troubleshooting guides and things like that. And I know, in a lot of tech companies, that's a big focus is, hey, we need to build processes. We need to build out our documentation for the project we just built. And you don't even have to think about this just in terms of Word and Excel, PowerPoint documents, but even in code, people who don't document their code, we talk about that as being such a huge problem because your ability to reuse that code, people use it internally, but as a team, if there's not good documentation, it's very, very difficult to be able to reuse resources. And I understand there's a lot of complexities to that, but that untapped knowledge of what's in people's heads, and then the problem that we talked about earlier, the knowledge drain. People walk right outside the organization and it's gone. Now, essentially, what we need to do here is talking about unlocking that knowledge. Now, essentially, there's explicit knowledge is the data that's actually captured. It's in documents, it's in records, it's in files. And the good news is with IoT, there's a lot of that data that's actually captured, because the systems are talking and recording, and there's lots of logs that we can use. But the challenge on the other side of this is tacit knowledge. It's the experience, it's the thinking, it's the competence and commitments and deeds. Those things, those lessons that we've learned, they often end up in our head and are never captured. And it's I heard it once described as like a firefighter. Two firefighters go into the building. One's the new one, and the other one has been doing firefighting for 20 years. The ability to recognize that this building is going to go down, or that behind that door is going to be an explosion or whatever, that's tacit knowledge. It's experience, and the ability for one person to know. It's hard for them to articulate and say, these are all the situations that are going on in this fire, and when it's dangerous and when we have to leave. It's tough to actually explain that. It's in the real world experience of it that people learn. So these valuable resources, it's best when they share it. How do we capture that knowledge? So we want to connect people to knowledge and knowledge to people. And with what Microsoft is working on with Microsoft 365, many developers in here are going to recognize Graph. Microsoft Graph is this network of content connecting knowledge, insights, expertise, and people. And it's actually the foundation that Project Cortex is built on top of. So this graph is essentially these signals and metadata that helps us to connect the people to the files and the content to the knowledge and so on. Now, when you talk about AI, and we're talking straight up artificial intelligence, when you look at who has been investing in AI and patents, there's been over 154,000 patents since 2010. And actually, this is a 2-year-old study, so you can imagine it's probably 200,000 patents now that have been generated related to machine learning and deep learning in neural networks. And you can see the companies there. You're going to recognize all of them. Microsoft, Alphabet, which is Google, Intel, Qualcomm, Samsung, Sony, Apple. So you can see where Apple's at in relation to this. Amazon. All these companies are focused on AI and deep learning. But you can see clearly, based on this report, Microsoft has actually been generating more patents than anybody else as it relates to the category of deep learning and machine learning. So that's kind of exciting for you who are introduced to AI, who have been working with AI. You can see Microsoft has been investing heavily here. And in fact, I don't know, it'd be interesting to know how many of you have actually been working with Azure Cognitive Services. And if you actually want to, you can use the hands up button in Teams. I'm curious, I'm just going to take a quick peek. I want you to raise your hand if you've actually been working with artificial intelligence, with AI. And I'm just going to look and see how many hands go up. Just use the hands up feature if you've been working with AI at all. Okay. Looks like in this crowd, not too many people have been working with AI yet. But as well, maybe haven't Haven't figured out how to use the hands up feature. All right, here we got some hands now. All right, thanks guys. I was looking for some interactivity. I appreciate that. Yeah, now we've got a few people. That's great. All right, so handful of you have been working with Azure Cognitive Services or AI, whether at Microsoft or elsewhere. Here's some examples. You know, when you start talking about what is artificial intelligence, well, here's a great way to articulate that. Vision, language, speech, this ability to do search. You know, it's artificial and intelligence. You know, when you start talking about what is this machine learning, there's the vision capabilities like facial detection, object detection. These are things that we can do as humans. We can recognize somebody's face. We can recognize an object. That's a ball. That's a dog. That's a cat. Recognizing on somebody's face when somebody's crying or somebody's happy, somebody's sad, and all these different emotions. This ability to work with the vision capabilities and say, this tree has a virus. This virus is this kind of virus. You know, it's we went very quickly from what a human can recognize to now what computers can recognize, and the computers have actually surpassed us in their ability to recognize these tigers. They've got a system set up now where it watches the tigers who walk past, and it can actually count them, the snow leopards. In fact, that's a great little project to look up, where you can actually see vision being used to catalog and count the number of snow leopards in the Himalayas. And what was surprising was the AI is actually better at it than the human eye is. And it's an interesting project. You should definitely check it out. Language and understanding, translation, transcription, moderation, analytics, spell check, these kinds of things. Search, where you've got visual search and video search, this visual search capabilities, auto-suggesting, and the speech side of it, speech to text, text to speech, translation, speaker recognition, understanding who in the room is the one who's actually speaking. And with that, you can then use the vision to detect their face, recognize who the person is who's speaking. There's a lot of amazing things that you can do here with this AI. And even with knowledge, the Q&A maker, you know, integrating with bots and image recognition and image search, and then built on Graph and Azure Search and so on. And even on top of that, you talk about all those things are capabilities inside of Azure. Now there's even more that's the behind the scenes with what Project Cortex is working with, where it's automated object detection, knowledge summarization, forms processing, file classification, entity extraction. And so these are kind of some of these advanced AI capabilities that we'll be taking advantage of with Project Cortex. So what we're going to do now is we're going to jump into a bit of a demo with Project Cortex so you can understand what it's doing. And I'm actually going to go back to that reference site. And what you do is you type aka.ms/Project Cortex, which will redirect to this resource site. And you can kind of see here what's happening. There's content, which is interacted by AI, which, leveraging the tools that we use every day, it can build innovative experiences. It builds out topic cards, topic pages, and knowledge centers, which are built inside of SharePoint Online, and exposes those through Office, Outlook, and Teams. So when we scroll down here, what I'm going to show you, that video we saw this morning, that's part of the Project Cortex overview. So you can get to that. We're actually going to go in here. There's a case study with Mott MacDonald where they're trying to connect their people to their knowledge. and leveraging vision capabilities. If we click in here into the demos, you can see that there's 4 different demos that are in here. The video is fairly similar to this one, so we're going to skip this one. There's some content capture, which leverages things like scanning and document capture, recognizing things. And the one I want to show you today is we're going to start with how easily it is to connect content to AI rules and tag your content. So we're gonna jump into this one. And this is a demo that each of you can jump right into. So this is a content center, and essentially with Project Cortex, there's really two major pieces to it. There's the knowledge center, which is where the AI-based AI-based topics and topic cards are, and then the content center, which is where the human interaction with the AI is with content center. So here we're going to create a new document library, just like in SharePoint. We click create, and here we've got the AI builder, which we're going to leverage, and we're going to build a forms processing experience. We're going to add some documents to that. Here we can add a bunch of PDFs, and notice these are all POs. So we basically created a purchase order library in our finance department, and we're going to upload a bunch of these documents and process them. So we're going to train the AI model with these documents, and we're going to pick out which fields in the PDFs that we care about. So we're going to say, yes, we want the vendor, yes, we want the PO number and the date, and we want the shipping address, and you can see there's a number of fields here we've got. So we've selected all these fields, including the subtotals, handling totals, comments, and so on. And so you can see these are the selected fields that we want, and now we're training our model based on those fields across those documents. And now we can publish the model, and then we can basically use a flow, just a power automate, essentially power automate flow, to build out our model so that it can pre-populate it can populate the columns as it's extracting that data. So it's basically looking at those fields to build that model out. And here you can see exactly what this looks like in the AI builder part of Power Automate. And now to test this out, we're going to add some documents. So we did before, we were testing it out. Now we're actually training it, and or it was trained on those documents. Now we're actually putting documents into it, and you can see in this sample what it did. So we have all our purchase orders, a bunch of PDFs, and it's extracted the date, the PO number, the vendor number, the shipping to, and the totals, and so on. Pretty awesome. And we can look at any one of these, and you can see that indeed, here's a preview of our document and all the data that's extracted from it. Now, what's great here, it's not just PDFs. We can do this with Word, Excel, PowerPoint. Basically, we can have it work with our documents and extract the data. Pretty powerful. You can do this with your scanned content as well. Doesn't just have to be. So here we are looking at that, and you can compare it, and that completes that demo. Let's do one other one so you can kind of see the differences here. Let's do the, in fact, let's jump into the Knowledge Center. You can actually see how this works with the tools we use every day. Here we are inside of Outlook. This is the Outlook web interface, and you can see there's a word that it recognizes. Here's an acronym. And you can see that this is actually an acronym. We've got a definition. We've got people who work on this. It's a topic card, essentially. You can see there's resources related to it. And its AI has built the relationships behind the scenes and built out connections between topics. And if we jump out to SharePoint, you can see Project Cortex has even integrated with the text here, and you can see it recognizes this as a topic, construction operations reliability. And here's the topic card that relates to it. We can click on it. It'll take us to the Knowledge Center. And what's exciting here for the SharePoint people who are on, this Knowledge Center is a part of SharePoint, just like the Content Center is. And we can see, here's my topics. These are trending topics that are happening. I can see who's doing what from a Knowledge Center perspective. I can see there's profiles of people and what topics they're working on. There's a little bit of gamification here. We can see that Lynn is the top 10 contributor. And there's a number of web parts to recognize the expertise. We've got different learning pathways and things like that for our knowledge. Pretty good stuff. And then there's some other ones as well, like if you're a project manager, you're trying to ramp up the content capture related with training documents, how you can automatically connect and organize knowledge, and empowering people with the tools as well. So there's a number of different demos in here. We'll jump back into the deck. Very interesting stuff. Now, we call this a network. It's a knowledge network, and you can actually see the connections between the topics, curated topics, as well as those that AI suggests. So it's actually reasoning over the data, building these summaries, building connections between the topics, and building out this very powerful knowledge network inside your organization. So that's really this idea of being able to partner the AI with the people, the people and the AI work together. So it becomes this yes, no, like, hey, here's a topic I suggest. You want to use this one? Yes. Is this a good description of it? Yes. Here's 6 topics. Are these all valid? No, not this one, not this one. So basically, it kind of works together with a validation process and it learns. It gets better and better. Here you can kind of see, is Planet Blue relevant in this context? Yes or no? Oh, thank you for improving the knowledge of the organization. And here it's saying Planet Blue matches more than one project. Which one is the relevant one? The one that's related to the system. Okay, click. All right. And now we've got Planet Blue system as well as Planet Blue Oceanic project. So you can have multiple topics that have different definitions for the same term and disambiguate them as well. So when you start talking about what is Project Cortex, connecting people to knowledge, it's the content processing with the files, categorizing, filtering, grouping, automating business processes. Once you've extracted content out, you can then process this knowledge. Now, where does the rubber meet the road with India? How does all this relate to India? Well, the cool thing here is the developers, the people who are knowledge managers, there's a number of different roles here, but there's aspects of building out the models. It's like AI can only go so far. There's the validation pieces. There's the training, so that AI can recognize these differences. So essentially, there is work absolutely that needs to be done to train. What is it? It's about managing, organizing, empowering, connecting your data, using AI to process security and compliance and workflows. It can be used to organize your teams and systems. It's very empowering, even in the tools we use every day. Like in that example of it pops up with underlined, highlighted content in Outlook and Teams and in the tools we're using, and even in Word. Basically, it's making our information smarter. So it's AI that recognizes. It's creating learning There's analytics and insights that's coming from it. It's doing summarization, so it can actually reduce the amount of data that we actually have to read, and it can summarize it and connect it into the graph so we can understand relationships between our data. Really, really powerful. And we've talked a lot about this, but I think these are some great visuals for understanding. It's like various data of different types, videos, images, audio, its ability to transcribe the data, summarize the data, recognize the faces, recognize the people, recognize the objects. We tell it what's important. It has all these capabilities, but it needs to be trained. So let's figure out how to import the right data, put it in the right place. Let's classify it and extract it. Let's build out insights and analytics based on it. And then we can tag, organize, and find our data. So essentially, it helps it become much more smart. Quick example. You talk about back to the Indiana Jones example of he stored the Ark in that massive warehouse. Well, how would we ever find it again? How would we find the Ark that's been stored in this massive warehouse? Well, if all we've got is like a barcode on there or a little bit of information, we don't have to go look in every single box. We want to have all this data, and then we need it to be able to be not just a single barcode. We want to be able to categorize all that data and say what is actually stored in this warehouse. So then I can say religious artifacts, and then I can see it pop up under religious artifacts. I can say things that are made out of gold that are here in the warehouse. Maybe things that are of a certain size or that have these kinds of uses. This is one that can help us win a battle or whatever. You want to know all the different interesting things about an object and then be able to leverage that for filtering, grouping, extracting, tagging, so that we can find it when we need it. And when you start talking about the architecture here of Project Cortex, first off, you kind of get the typical user interface, which is in the tools we use every day, like SharePoint, Teams, Yammer, Outlook, and so on. And then we've got your topic cards, topic pages, the topic center, the content center. Those are the different interfaces that we use. And behind the scenes, you've got Graph, you've got the AI itself, which is essentially doing the processing. You can use the search. You can build out data sources and connectors. So this is where the AI build various APIs where we can connect our knowledge to whether it's forms or documents or content that may be stored in databases or data that's stored in SharePoint or in IBM. Any variety of different data sources. And as well, even in Teams. So you're having a chat with a new employee. That new employee can say, "Oh, you said the word Project Core. What's Project Core?" All he's got to do is click on it, and you can see Core refers to construction operations reliability, and I can now see information about that topic because it's been built out, and I can click on it, and then it takes me to the knowledge center, and so on. Now, I talked about there being a lot of different roles. In the organization, you may have a content services admin, somebody who's responsible for the rights and permissions to the data. They monitor the service health. You may have a knowledge manager whose responsibility for quality. They do the validation. They're just determining what can be mined, building out the structure of this knowledge map, the data that's going into Graph, understanding the visibility of the different knowledge. And then you've got the various subject matter experts. And these are people who already work in your organization. The other two may be new roles in the organization, or they may be people who are being assigned to this project. And I mentioned search and indexing. Some examples of data that you can actually connect with the search connectors: Windows file shares, ServiceNow, SQL databases, MediaWiki, Salesforce, Azure Data Lakes. Yeah, so you can see how it can actually, on the back end, Microsoft Graph can ingest the data from these services, and then that data can be presented through the UI in Teams or Windows or Bing or Search or SharePoint or Outlook and so on. What's the business value here? And I actually put together an infographic. If you go out to collabshow.com, you'll notice there's a Project Cortex link in the UI that'll take you to this full infographic. So when I think about Project Cortex and AI in the enterprise, it's for training, classifying, modeling, automating, and then you got the human aspect where it's the reinforcement validation piece where you can manage your rules or manage your set of topics, the taxonomy, the acronyms. And what is it doing? It's reasoning over your data to extract it, filter it, group it, cluster it. So we're essentially using AI and machine learning and machine teaching to build out really powerful capabilities for understanding our data. A lot of this, really ultimately what it comes down to, it's about understanding our organization's data. You know, if you say, what is this about? It's automatically organizing our content, delivering innovative experiences with topic cards, topic pages, and knowledge centers in Office, Outlook, and Teams. So what's the business value here? Why would anybody ever do this? It's empowering teams with the expertise that you already use. You know, we talked about that mining of tacit knowledge. It's advanced artificial intelligence to harness the collective knowledge of the organization. It's going to understand the patterns and relationships between data. So if you're a new employee, your ability to understand the terms and acronyms that people are using, so you can click and then get the knowledge behind that, the data that's already in the files. It's for streamlining business processes with security and compliance and automation. You know, you talk about people who use AI. Today, there's a lot of work that goes into compliance and having it look over your data to see, oh, this one has a keyword in it. This shouldn't be released. This should actually be sensitive. So we need to reclassify these documents. So that can be really important from a security perspective. Discovering data across platforms, and then empowering organizations for agility. And then you have the automated extracting and tagging and so on. So I know that you guys have probably seen TV shows about hoarders or people who just have so much data. You know, people have their DVD collections or CD collections or books and books and books, massive libraries of things, and just people hoard their magazines or whatever. Where was that Star Wars DVD? Where is that information? Where did I store that? You know, you think about what the capability is here. From a physical perspective, it's like, oh, I want to catalog my baseball cards or my cricket cards. Being able to look across your data and what does it do? Labeling, tagging, connecting to data, classifying, extracting, capturing. Whether it's leveraging the Power Platform so we can do automation, or whether it's in Azure for building out applications. There's a lot that we can do. It doesn't just stop with the UI of the Knowledge Center or the Content Center, but actually building out applications, leveraging the APIs as well. So it ultimately comes down to people don't want to tag documents, and AI can solve the problem. And we can seed taxonomies to enhance it. And there's things we can do. You may be saying, when is this coming? Well, Project Cortex, we're actually going to hear about this next week in Microsoft Ignite. Highly recommend you check out aka.ms/Project Cortex to get more information about it. We will see a release. In fact, there's going to be a couple of releases. October is a very important release that's coming next month, but you're going to hear a bunch at Ignite this week. People may be asking about licensing. Absolutely. Here's a quote from Chris McNulty. Microsoft is planning to offer Project Cortex as a premium product. It won't be included in the baseline E1, E3. It will be disclosed at general availability during the product release stage. So with that, I want to open it up to questions. If anybody has anything, I've got my link to my LinkedIn. Feel free to connect on LinkedIn. Would love for you to check out my YouTube and subscribe to my YouTube. I've got a few thousand subscribers. I talk about travel. I talk about technology. Lots of fun stuff. With that, I will open it up, and you can come off mute if you have any questions. I think we have just a few minutes. And I will pull back the UI so we can see what kind of questions come in. And if you want, you can just type your question as well. I'm now monitoring the Q&A. Don't be shy. If you have any questions, feel free.
Yeah,
Yeah, VJ, go ahead.
sure. If there are no questions, then we can close the session, Joanne.
Sure. Hey,
Thank you.
all right, here comes one. Great demo and insights on Project Cortex. Will this be available for E5 licensed users? You know, that's the question we all have. We're wondering if it's going to be included in E5. I expect that there will be some aspects of it being available.